I'm Paul Maxfield, Executive Director of Children of Promise, and we're back in video 2 with Children of Promise founders Sidney and Jean Johnson. And in video 1, they shared with us about their missionary life experience through many years in Asia. And now we're going to talk a little bit about the founding of Children of Promise. And so, Sidney and Jean, we were talking in the last video about the fact that you ended up in Bangkok, where you did a ministry throughout Asia for the Church of God. And it was from that position that you eventually retired from the missionary board. So how did Children of Promise come about? You had this career in missionary service for so many years, and then all of a sudden, Children of Promise pops up. Tell us, how did that occur? Jean, you're probably the one to share that.
The board had asked Mac to be the Asia administrator in 1986. And so we came home, and I said to him, what am I going to do? Because I had been anyhow. So he said, I need you to travel with me. And so I started traveling with him throughout in 86. Anyhow, the time came when we were making our last administrative visit throughout Asia. And as we talked with the different leaders, we asked them specifically, how can we help you in our years of retirement? And they said, help our children.
So you clearly had some sort of path ahead of you. So how did then Children of Promise come out of that request you heard from those leaders? How did it actually happen then?
I had been after him to let's start a children's program, and he kept saying, wait. So when we retired in 92, he said, go for it. So then we went to Doris Dale, and we said we want to start a children's program. She said, we're not overseas people, go to Norm Patton. So we went over to Norm Patton, and he said, sounds like a good idea, you go for it.
So from the go for it to the first child sponsored, how did that take place? How did you put all this together?
I retired January the 31st, 1992. I had arranged to visit churches for that whole year because I knew I had to keep busy. Mm-hmm. So as we traveled, we said, now we need to, the women of the missionary board had approved us going ahead and developing this program. So as we traveled, we thought about it and we started working on guidelines. And those guidelines, they were lost on the computer, so we had to start over again. Anyway, they were revised, and we worked on them until June, a camp meeting of 1992. And at that time, Doris Dale and Norm Patton announced that we would have a children's ministry of the Church of God. Now, Jean and I knew that we needed this program, a unified program in the Church of God for children. And we knew the church was ready for it. And so that's when she said, go for it. When I said go for it, and we went for it. And so Children of Promise started from June 1992, and it's still going throughout the world in 27 countries.
It is. And you know, as the executive director now, I have had the privilege of working on all of that, on top of all that groundwork that you laid. And you did such a fine job of setting this up. I mean, we could talk for hours about all the details of what's set up, but the fact is you set it up really well. And one of the things that is such a hallmark of Children of Promise that people really appreciate when we introduce them to it and talk to them about it is how the local congregations around the world in various countries, in villages and cities and on islands and deserts, there's these congregations all over that are involved, and their involvement directly in the program is such a unique and important aspect of how you set this up. How did you come to that decision to involve the churches and to do it that way?
As we thought of having children sponsored for nutrition, education, and medical help, we thought, well, another thing that was very important for us was the Christian nurture. And there was no way that we could do that, the Christian nurture part. So whenever we were invited, we explained to the churches, that is your responsibility. We will take care of the physical needs, but you have to take care of the spiritual needs. And I'm so thankful that God gave us that insight, because it makes the biggest difference in all the world.
Yes, it does. And you know, we say today, when we talk to people about Children of Promise, that the spiritual benefits are the most important to us. And so it makes so much sense that from the beginning that was a priority, and it was established that way. So.
And in our missionary career, we had worked closely with the churches. We didn't go out and do anything on and work closely with the churches. So we had a background of doing this. And from our background, we knew that if in this new program for children, if the church was involved, it would go. And it did. I talked to a Methodist brother, and I said, this is what we're planning to do. He said, you should do it through the church. So we knew that God was in it.
Mm-hmm. And that has proven to be true.
Yeah.
You know, today all over the world, in those 27 countries, and soon to be 29, there are local Christians in those churches who are impacting the children directly. And I love the way that you set this up, because the relationships those kids have are with the local church people. It's not with an organization someplace, it's with local church people. So that was really such an important thing that you did with that. And it has set the tone and the way ministry has operated for Children of Promise ever since. So.
Our background in missions enabled us to do this.
Well, that really made a difference.
Yeah.
So. Well, I want to thank you so much for sharing with us today, and it's such a blessing to have you here and to hear again this story, and I hope that it will be helpful to people to know more about how Children of Promise got started.
Amen.
Thank you.
I had a plaque in our office, 100 years from now, it won't matter what my bank account was, the kind of house I lived in, or the kind of car I drove. But it would matter to be different. The world would be different because I was important in the life of a child.